What's going on, everybody? Before I start the video, I just want to say there are massive spoilers ahead for Omar's character and for The Wire as a whole. So if you haven't seen the show, I am begging you to click off this video and watch the show for yourself. I don't know why you would have even clicked on this video if you haven't, but just in case, go watch it. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Omar Little.
You come at the king, you best not miss.
So everyone already knows that Omar is one of the coolest and most fascinating characters ever created in the history of television, honestly. He is just an incredibly magnetic person to watch on screen, in a series already filled with incredibly magnetic characters. Yet Omar stands out from the rest throughout the entire series. So why is that? What makes this character so fun to watch? Well, for starters, the actor that played Omar, Kenneth Williams, was a phenomenal actor, and no one could have ever played the role of Omar Little to the magnitude that he did. However, Michael sadly passed away in 2021 from a drug overdose. He was only 54 years old, and it's just a fucking tragedy that this man isn't with us anymore. And while that fact is incredibly sad, on the bright side, Michael managed to leave behind one of the greatest performances of one of the most beloved characters in all of television. Rest in peace, Michael Kenneth Williams. So many other shows try and fail time and time again to make their characters engaging enough to keep an audience hooked. Yet, somehow the team that worked on The Wire has seemed to have done it damn near flawlessly without even breaking a sweat. Now, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be able to craft a compelling character if you had a gun pointed at the back of my head, so I don't really have any room to criticize anyone else's work. I'm just a most likely autistic loser that gets way too into the shows and the movies that I enjoy. However, I think that it's common knowledge at this point that the film industry has been shoving slop down our throats for a long time now. So it's always refreshing to look back at what The Wire did, and the many different aspects that make this show a genuine 10 out of 10. I can't really think of many other shows that match up to it, honestly. Now, don't get me wrong, there are shows that come incredibly close to The Wire in terms of character writing, dialogue, and all-around enjoyment that I got from it on my first watch, but I still think that The Wire tops every single one of them for me. The realism that the creators managed to convey is just on a different fucking level. This show makes it feel like you're watching real people in a real city with real stakes, and there isn't a single other show that I can think of that has pulled this off on the same level that The Wire has. But damn near everyone already knows how phenomenal the show is, so you don't need me to tell you that. Okay, so let's actually get into the point of the video. Who the fuck is this Omar guy, and why is he whistling? Omar Little is a stick-up boy that robs drug dealers in Baltimore, the west side of Baltimore to be exact, which just so happens to be the worst of the city districts. The drug game has almost completely consumed the west side of Baltimore, so when Omar was growing up, he was completely surrounded by the game. So the game is all Omar has ever known. So now, as an adult, Omar is feared by any player that shares the same zip code as him. Yet Omar, despite being surrounded by violence his entire life, still lives by a very strict moral code that is a big part of what makes him such a compelling character. Omar is commonly described as the gangster with a heart. He will never put his gun on any tax-paying citizen no matter what. However, if you're in the game and you've accepted the risks that come with that, then you're a potential target for him. If you have consciously made the decision to get involved in the dirt that plagues Baltimore, then Omar will point his double barrel at your head and run your pockets without a second thought. Now, don't get that confused. Omar loves the game. He isn't trying to stop the madness.
All in the game, yo.
He thrives in that shit. Omar just plays the game for himself, and he plays it well. He is a very calculated man that plans out every move he makes ahead of time, doing stakeouts on his targets for days on end, watching them come and go to get a read on how their operation works to assure the best outcome when he does decide to make his move. Omar is a gay man as well, which is an excellent subversion from a writing standpoint. Omar being gay does serve another purpose too. People underestimate him at first because how could this universally feared stick-up boy that everyone is scared of know what he's doing if he likes to suck cock in his free time? Omar is constantly being called a faggot by the other characters that oppose him.
He said he all faggot.
A faggot?
Mm-hmm.
Faggot.
Yet they can never seem to catch him, and he always seems to have the upper hand. Even though he runs solo, or at times has a max of 3 people helping him with his vendettas, the man is elusive as hell, to say the least. Omar playing the game for himself is one of his greatest assets. He doesn't have that kingpin mindset that Stringer and Avon do. He doesn't send some random killer to do his dirt, relying on somebody else to do the killing for him. Omar does that shit himself, making his moves in the shadows and staking out the random stash houses that he plans to hit, making each move with an an incredible amount of care and consideration to ensure that he's prepared for anything that could possibly happen. Omar's trench coat and double barrel shotgun are iconic to the fans of the show, and they're feared by every corner boy and every big player in the city. This motherfucker is like a cryptid in the city of Baltimore. Everyone knows his name and everyone knows that he isn't one to be fucked with. If you're going after Omar, just know that Omar is coming after you.
Oh, indeed.
The Wire does an incredible job at making its characters feel larger than life. Stringer Bell, Avon Barksdale, Marlo Stanfield, Brother Muzone, just to name a few, they all give off this massive presence in their own different ways. But no one gives off this feeling more than Omar does, in my opinion. I see you typing that comment. Yeah, but this character— shut up! So let's take a look at what happens when you do fuck with Omar. And Avon Barksdale is the first one to find out. So let's establish the events that took place leading up to their rivalry. So a second ago, I mentioned that Omar likes dudes. So his first boyfriend / partner in crime that we get introduced to is a man named Brandon. In season 1, Brandon is shown to be someone that Omar has an immense amount of love for. The two of them rob drug dealers together with the help of another guy named John Bailey. Bailey isn't a gay man like Omar and Brandon. It's heavily implied that he really just tags along for the money. I'm guessing he just sticks around because the three of them make a pretty good team. We're shown a scene early on in season 1 of them staking out a Barksdale stash house / open drug market called the Lowrisers. The Lowrisers, aka The Pit, are just a group of run-down low-rise apartment buildings. This is where the Barksdales have one of their shops set up. This location is overseen by D'Angelo Barksdale. Video on D'Angelo coming very soon, by the way. The stick-up boys watched the crew for days on end, scoping out the muscle and waiting for the re-up to get delivered. After a pretty successful robbery, the boys grab the package and leave. However, this stick-up would later prove to be the start of a massive revenge cycle between the Barksdales and Omar. Avon puts it out on the street that he's paying good money to whoever kills Omar or any of the stick-up boys that had a hand in the robbery. The Barksdales end up killing John Bailey first. They kill him off-screen, and Omar later mentions that Bailey had a lot of enemies.
Man, Bailey, please. The nigga's enemies got enemies.
So he just assumed that one of them caught up to him. That is until one of the corner boys named Wallace, video on him also coming very soon, ends up spotting Omar's boyfriend at a restaurant and he's playing on a pinball machine. Wallace calls up D'Angelo and D'Angelo ends up calling Stringer Bell to get his top hitters onto Brandon ASAP. One of the Barksdale hitters named Weebay and a few others go to the restaurant and handcuff Brandon, torturing the man for hours trying to get him to give up Omar, but he never does. He stands tall and dies an agonizing death full of cuts, cigarette burns, and beatings instead of giving up Omar. Once the deed is done, the Barksdales drop Brandon's body at the Lowrisers in plain view as a message. A massive warning to everyone around that if you fuck with the Barksdales, this is what's gonna happen. But this would prove to be a huge oversight by them because now Omar only has one mission in mind: bring down the Barksdale Empire and get revenge for Brandon by any means necessary. And I mean any means necessary. He starts by accepting an invitation to speak with Detective McNulty and Kima Greggs. Keep in mind that going to the police for any reason is a mortal sin in the streets.
What I do, I do. Straight like that. So ain't no sense y'all even troubling yourselves over that, because, man, the way I feel right now today...
But fuck that, Omar lives by his own code. He doesn't give a shit that he'll be known as a rat if word gets out. He wants to damage the Barksdale organization in any way he can.
Hey, what y'all need from me?
Now you might be thinking that Omar started all this by robbing the stash house, so why is he making such a drastic decision when it's all in the game, as Omar says himself? Well, after McNulty shows Omar the corpse of his deceased boyfriend, Omar gets to see just how much pain Brandon endured, and the level of suffering his killers put him through. All bets are off now in Omar's eyes. The Barksdales went way too far. They put Brandon through absolute hell over a little stick-up. Now obviously they can't let that slide. This is fucking West Baltimore. If you rob somebody and they find you later on, they're gonna kill you. That's just how the game works. But they didn't just kill Brandon. The Barksdales mutilated Brandon, which in turn obviously made the situation incredibly personal for Omar. The Barksdales went way too far, and it's time for Omar to grab a shotgun. So this is the foundation that Omar's story is built upon. His desire for vengeance and his love for the game completely drive him. He spends all of his time plotting and striking at Avon and his people. The odds are heavily stacked against him, but Omar is smart.
Aries. Greeks called him Aries. Same dude, different name is all.
Aries fits. Thanks.
See, back in middle school and all, I used to love them mitts.
He knows how to play this game, and like I said, he plays it well.
Nah, man, I'm just a nigga with a plan, at all.
Or the shotgun.
It creates this amazing dynamic of a sympathetic killer that uses both sides of the law to his advantage. This is emphasized heavily in Season 1. McNulty and Greggs even get Omar to wear a wire during a parlay with Stringer Bell and Prop Joe, who is the big player on the east side of Baltimore. The three talk about a potential truce after Omar drops a high-up Barksdale associate named Stinkum. McNulty and Greggs hear about the murder and look the other way on it because they need Omar.
One thing, Omar. Having Stinkum drop kind of fucks us on our thing. We all have a certain admiration for your do-it-yourself nature.
We need you to hang back.
But the game is out there, and it's either play or get played.
Lester, are we still cops?
Technically, I suppose so.
Okay, I was just checking.
After Omar falsely puts himself in as a witness to the murder of a state's witness named William Gant, pinning it on the Barksdales, or more specifically, a man named Bird.
Fuck you, fat man.
I thought we were friends.
This is a good example of what I said a minute ago. Omar plays both sides of the law and succeeds for the most part. Throughout the rest of the show, Omar is hunting someone down 95% of the time. His hunt for Avon Barksdale, which later changes to Stringer Bell, Avon's right-hand man, comes to an end in the most well-written and satisfying way possible, with Omar and another cryptid of Baltimore with a massive reputation named Brother Muzone teaming up to take down Stringer Bell for good. So there is one more aspect of Omar's philosophy that I wanted to explore a bit before I end the video. And that is the many different ways that Omar is forced to face the contradictions in his morality/code. His biggest thing is no taxpayers. He would never put his gun on a taxpaying citizen. But at the same time, he's willing to have massive firefights during the day in a neighborhood full of families and children.
Yo, y'all ready? Let's bang out.
He may not be killing citizens, but he's still contributing to the violence and overall barbaric nature of Baltimore, not to mention putting everyone around him at risk. We can still cheer him on as an underdog in a brutal environment on this crazy warpath for revenge, but we also can't forget that all of Omar's actions leave behind damage and consequences that are unseen by him. There's this great scene with Bunk and Omar talking on a bench after a massive stick-up against the Barksdales goes wrong and leaves one of Omar's people dead in the street. Bunk throws Omar's code back in his face.
All this death, you don't think that ripples out? You don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about.
He tells Omar that all of the death that he leaves in his wake ripples out. Families are massively affected. People are terrified to leave their homes because Omar coming. Bunk tells him that he saw kids at the crime scene pretending to be Omar.
Kids acting like Omar, calling you by name, glorifying your ass. Makes me sick, motherfucker, how far we done fell.
Glorifying him when all Omar really did was get one of his people killed. He talks about their neighborhood growing up and how they had some tough dudes, but everyone still settled things without dropping bodies. He calls Omar a predatory motherfucker, and I don't know why, but this line just hits me so hard.
And predatory motherfuckers like you.
Every time I watch it. This is just one of my absolute favorite scenes in the entire show. I love it. As Bunk is talking, you can see that Omar becomes more and more defeated as his code is being dismantled right before him. This whole scene just perfectly represents the moral quandaries that come with living by such a code. Omar Little just has an amazing amount of depth as a character. Watching him wrestle with his convictions and desires is just great. This character is easily in my top 3 favorite characters of all time. I don't even mean in TV, movies. I mean in any piece of media. This is in my top 3 favorite characters. Every scene that Omar is in is just so captivating and fun while still having a very deep arc as a character. I don't know, man. Omar fucking rocks. If you haven't watched The Wire, you should kill yourself. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know I didn't cover Omar's entire story, but that wasn't my goal with this. I just love the character and wanted to talk about him, and I hope you enjoyed. I will gladly take any suggestions anyone has for video topics or shows to watch, movies to watch, anything. Just leave them down below, and yeah, I might make a video on it. So thank you guys for watching. Peace.
Look, in my game, you take some care and you play the safest way you can. But it ain't about no hiding forever. You heard? And frankly, you've been in it as long as me. You do the thing on your name.
Anyone gonna come after Omar, they're gonna know Omar is coming after him.
Oh, indeed.